originally started speaking on the topic of raw foods at the Optimum Health Institute in Southern California. I had gone there to do the program, which is an Ann Wigmore derivative program, and I stayed on and became one of the staff members and was lecturing on various topics in that environment. And I had a couple of hundred students a week, and so they would invite me to come to Chicago or Maui or to their school or their church, and so it just sort of grew. Some of the major stumbling blocks I've noticed when people are wanting to transition to raw foods are detoxification, social considerations, needing to learn how to technically prepare the food, and I would say a large stumbling block is having more energy and therefore having a smaller sleep requirement, and suddenly you're staying up later, getting up earlier, and the rest of your former social cadre aren't keeping pace with you, so needing to find new ways to fill up your time. But the largest stumbling block of all is dealing with the emotional growth, because as you are allowing your body to function the way it's designed to function, your experiences, and not merely your experience, but also what's literally happening, is more energy is moving through your body. Eating raw generally also means eating organic, and when you're eating organic foods which have not been cooked, you're getting enzyme live foods, and you're not ingesting toxins as you would be if you were eating conventionally grown foods. And so there's much more energy running through your body because you're not taking things in generally which are dampening your natural energy. And when you have more physical energy running through, what immediately happens is some of your emotional things that you haven't been wanting to deal with start coming up to be dealt with. And I would say that's where I see most people hit the wall, is not having adequate access to resources for protocols for moving through their emotional baggage. The first stumbling block people run into when they start eating raw and organic foods is detoxification. Anytime you put into your body or start doing with your body anything that allows it to function more effectively, the first thing that the body's going to want to do is eliminate any toxic materials or imbalances which are in it. And so many people, when they first start either exercising or drinking more water or eating organic food or eating raw foods or eating less food or fasting for a few days, one of the first problems, quote unquote, that arises is that they'll start having a runny nose, maybe their skin will break out, they'll have what we refer to as a healing crisis. And having seen thousands of people go from eating absolutely conventional standard American diet food and then taking them on Saturday they're eating that way, and on Sunday suddenly they're eating 100% raw organic food. I've watched many people go through the initial detoxification process, and they have headaches, they have runny noses, they're exhausted, they're lying on the floor, they can't stay awake, they're cold. And within a week, I would say 95, maybe 98% of them are feeling better than they have felt in 20 or 30 years, and some of them better than they've felt in their entire lives. And I would say almost without exception, maybe 1 in 1,000 is not past that point after 10 days. Usually by 10 days, there's maybe only 1 person in 1,000 who's still in the detoxification process. So getting across that initial little boundary there is a big deal, because of course people are frightened. They don't understand why they feel so poorly if they're doing something that's taking care of themselves. A second skill people need to develop if they want to successfully transition to a raw living foods menu is learning how to prepare the food. And although we have cakes, cookies, pies, entrees, soups, etc. in the world of living foods, the textures and the flavors are similar to the textures and flavors in the world of conventional foods. However, the paths and the ingredients and the machines used to prepare the foods are all different. And so if someone really knows their way around a kitchen, they can grab one of there are probably 60 raw food prep books on the market at this point. My favorites for flavor, not for health, but for flavor, are Giuliano's book, which is called Raw, R-A-W, it's out in hardback. My second favorite, also not a book that pays very close attention to food combining, is Rita Romano's book, which is called Dining in the Raw. Interesting, they're both Italians. I think the rumors about Italians being enormously gifted in the field of food preparation really hold true in my observation. So I would suggest if people are wanting to transition that they get hold of one of those two books. If someone is really ill, and that's the reason they're coming to raw foods, then I would suggest Nomi Shannon's book, The Raw Gourmet, which focuses more closely on proper food combining techniques, etc., and goes into some of the reasons behind some of the guidelines for healthy food preparation. What would be another problem someone would run into? Social concerns. What am I going to eat when I travel to the Bahamas? What am I going to eat at my cousin's wedding in Canvas when I'm staying at the house for 4 days? What am I going to eat when I go to the conference in Dallas for a week? And there are a lot of solutions available for all those questions. There are classes and workshops that assist people in developing social skills so that when I, for instance, come in and all I'm interested in eating is a banana and an orange, and everyone else wants to have steak tartare, what I want is for them to be comfortable with me having a banana and an orange. And there are ways of assisting them in being comfortable and not feeling that I'm in being judgmental of them, which of course would interfere with my social life and my enjoyment of their presence, their company. Also, the largest stumbling block I have observed, and this is even more a stumbling block with people who've developed physical illnesses. When you start eating organic foods, not even talking about living foods, but when you start eating organic foods, that means that you're not eating poisons, you're not eating pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, food coloring, etc. If I'm not eating poison every single day, 3 meals a day, maybe a couple of snacks, is my body going to function better? Am I going to have a higher energy level? Absolutely. And the statistics are that people who are eating conventional menus and not eating organic food, that they are, over the course of a year, getting the equivalent of a pound to 3 pounds, so the average would be 2 pounds. An average of 2 pounds of powdered toxic material annually. It's shocking, but when you think that conventional foods are grown with fertilizers and preservatives, etc., most of these toxic materials come in powder form, and they're then dissolved in water, and they're then sprayed on the ground or sprayed on the plant or mixed in with the food in very tiny amounts. But when you add up the tiny amounts, every single mouthful, every single meal, over a year, you end up with an average, depending on your body size, of course, of 2 pounds of toxins. Well, if you sat down on January 1st with a spoon and you ate your 2 pounds of toxic materials, probably you would not even make it to the hospital. Why is it that we're able to survive eating all of this poison? It's because we take it into our body in minute portions. And what does the body do with it? Is this a food for us? Is this a nutrient? No, this comes into the body. Most of these chemicals really came into use in the United States after World War II. That's really when chemical agriculture got a hold. So our bodies have not developed to the point where they have mechanisms for dealing with them. Your liver is a detoxifying organ, that's true. Your skin is a detoxifying organ, that's true. And much of this material gets locked in your fatty tissues. It comes in to your intestinal tract, the food gets torn apart by your digestive processes, the body gets hold of the toxic material, says, what the heck do I do with this? Slaps it in your fatty tissue. 20 years down the line, you may have a cancer and you have no idea where it came from. This is one of the sources of the cancers. I sometimes get asked whether it's more effective or safer for people to transition into a living foods lifestyle quickly or over a period of time. My observation is that for people who do want to transition quickly, it's possible. However, I would strongly suggest that they do so in one of the raw residential retreats, of which there are about a half dozen in the United States, maybe a dozen scattered across the planet, where as you're going through your detoxification crisis, there are people around who've already watched hundreds or thousands of other people go through the same process, and they have some idea whether what you're experiencing is out of the norm or absolutely conventional. Because there are some few people who are so frail in certain ways that possibly their bodies could be overburdened by the transition. However, I've seen people who were terminally ill, so they were told by their physicians, with cancer, and people who were very, very ill with other diseases who went 100% directly into a full-on raw foods lifestyle and successfully made that transition. And I've seen people who were ostensibly healthy, who were just coming in to sort of freshen up, who had a very difficult time and who also made the transition well. As long as they were remaining in that environment. As soon as they return home to the environment where the stressors existed, which propelled them initially into the lifestyle which has served them poorly, and within which they developed their diseases, or within which they just found themselves feeling exhausted, drained, dragged down, whatever, not feeling good. Of course, we're all Pavlovian creatures, and the tendency is to want to sink into one's customary patterns. Every time I sit down in front of the TV, I eat a tuna fish sandwich. I guess that's not on the scale of bad things people could do. Maybe we say chocolate bonbons, or I don't want to mention any brand names, but we can imagine bad things that people may have as a standard custom in their lifestyle. And it's a real trick to go back to your home and not do these customary behaviors. So for people who really want to make a transition frequently, they will remain in a protected environment for 3 months, 6 months, until they feel that they really are rock steady in their commitment and in their feeling of well-being, so that as soon as they eat whatever their bonbon is and their body goes into rebellion saying, why are you putting this in me, I hate it, a flag will go off, and it will be easy for them to not do that again to themselves. If people want to remain in their customary lives and make the transition, my suggestion is wherever they're at, if they are drinking a 6-pack of beer and eating 2 steaks a day and smoking a pack of cigarettes, my suggestion is pick one little change that you want to make in your lifestyle and firmly commit to that one change. In the case of the person I just mentioned, I would suggest that they start by stopping the cigarettes. That seems like the most toxic thing that they're doing. But whatever it is, it could be going from 2 steaks a day to 1 steak a day. It could be going from a 6-pack of beer to only 2 beers. Whatever the commitment is, that they make that commitment and hold steady on it for 3 months. By which time it should be sort of a natural part of their life to no longer be doing that behavior, and then choose the next behavior. Maybe they want to continue eating their one steak, but they're going to switch and they're going to be eating all organic from now on. They're going to continue with ice cream, they're going to continue with steak, they're going to continue with cooked food, but it will all be organic. Fine. But be 100%, be all organic for the next 3 months. Now you have 2 behaviors you've shifted and that you're not going to resume for the rest of your life. And if you do this step-by-step shift over a period of a couple of years, you will have very measurably, sizably altered your entire energy flow, the pattern of your menu. Probably you've incorporated exercise in your lifestyle, etc. And you're going to be feeling like you're living in a different body. And in real terms, since our cells regenerate regularly, you will be living in a different body. So my observation is that even with the support of staying in an environment where all of the supports are available for making the shift, there are very few people who are up to doing it 100%. And where I see most of the success stories is people who take incremental steps every couple 3 months and stick with them. And over a period of a couple 3 years, they are very, very different. And that's really what I would mostly suggest. Of course, many people, by the time they're even considering eating living foods, have already spent 20 years eating organic foods, they've already eaten macrobiotic foods, they're already vegan, etc. And they may already be eating 20, 30, 50, 60% raw foods without even thinking about it, eating fruit and salads and organic nuts, which frequently are raw. And so for them, yes, of course, jump over the edge of the cliff, go 100% raw. You'll love it. It'll be great. But those people have already gone through much of their detoxification process. I have seen people whose menus consist to the largest part of flesh foods and grains get very, very, very ill when they started eating even just a couple of meals of greens and fruits. There's a lot of material which can get locked in the intestinal tract, and if you start having too much live food in there attempting to break down the old material, that can get pretty uncomfortable. The experience would be stomach cramps, diarrhea, etc. So if you want to continue working and driving your children to school, etc., this is one of the reasons that changing your lifestyle incrementally will work better for you, because you will detox so slowly that in many cases you'll never even notice that you're detoxing. You'll never have the headaches, you won't have the stomach aches, etc. And I am absolutely a living foods activist. That's why I'm known as RawMa. However, the most crucial thing for anyone to do at this point is eat organic. So whatever amount of living foods you want to put into your menu, the first thing to do is switch to organic. Say, once someone is eating organic, the next step in transitioning to raw is to look at what quantity of raw foods you already have in your menu and just up that quantity. If you estimate you have 10% because once a week you eat a salad, great, why don't you go to 30%? Or if you're already at 50%, why don't you go to 80%? Or to up the quantity of raw foods. And the rest of your former social cadre aren't keeping pace with you, so needing to find new ways to fill up your time. But the largest stumbling block of all is dealing with the emotional growth, because as you are allowing your body to function the way it's designed to function, your experiences, and not merely your experience, but also what's literally. And I stayed on and became one of the staff members, and was lecturing on various topics in that environment, and I had a couple of hundred students a week, and so they would invite me to come to Chicago or Maui or to their school or their church, and so it just sort of grew. Some of the major stumbling blocks I've noticed when people are wanting to transition to raw food happening is more energy is moving through your body. Eating raw generally also means eating organic, and when you're eating organic foods which have not been cooked, you're getting enzyme-live foods and you're not ingesting toxins as you would be if you were eating conventionally grown foods. And so there's much more energy running through your body because you're not taking things in general. I originally started speaking on the topic of raw foods at the Optimum Health Institute in Southern California. I had gone there to do the program, which is an Ann Wigmore derivative program. And foods are detoxification, social considerations, needing to learn how to technically prepare the food, and I would say a large stumbling block is having more energy and therefore having a smaller sleep requirement, and suddenly you're staying up later, getting up earlier.